All right, so you're a creative pro, right? I mean, you get it. You need a laptop that can, handle those massive files, keep up with your ideas, but you don't want to, throw out your bag carrying it around. If you've been searching for that perfect balance, well, stick around.
Yeah, you're in the right place. Today, we're diving deep into the ASUS ProArt PX13 laptop. Think of this as your shortcut to figuring out if this machine can actually level up your creative game. And we're talking to, designers out there, video editors drowning in 4K footage, digital artists, filmmakers on location, photographers dealing with huge raw files, even 3D artists pushing those polygon counts.
Absolutely. We've gone through a bunch of expert reviews, including a seriously in-depth one over at RechargeMyTopup.com. We wanted to pull out, what really matters. We'll give you the rundown on this laptop, what it mails, and maybe where it stumbles a bit. Also, you can make a good decision without having to become a tech expert overnight.
Right. We're going beyond just the specs on paper, too. We're looking at how the design, how it's built, how that impacts your actual work, how the display affects your visuals, how powerful it really is, and all those little features that could either save you tons of time or drive you a little crazy.
Okay, but you're probably thinking, sure, it sounds powerful and all, but what's it actually like to use day to day? Let's start with the design, how this thing feels in your hand, in your bag. The reviews all seem to agree it's got a sleek, professional vibe. They keep calling the color nano black, and it's made from this aluminum-magnesium alloy. That was pretty tough, pretty high-end.
Yeah, it is. That alloy is a good choice. Gives you that, that premium feel you want from a professional tool, but it's surprisingly light. Around 1.3 kilos. If you're always moving between, studios or client meetings, that portability is a real plus.
And it's not just about being easy to carry. This thing seems built to take a beating. Apparently, it passed the Mile STD 810H torture tests. I mean, torture tests, that's got to give you some peace of mind, especially if you're, a little clumsy or you travel a lot with your gear.
Yeah, definitely points to a level of robustness. The kind you'd want from something you depend on for your work. You need a device that can handle those everyday bumps and scrapes without, falling apart. Plus, this is a 2-in-1, right? It has that 360-degree hinge, so you can flip it into tablet mode. And that's not just about convenience. For digital artists, that could be a game changer. Using a stylus, you can get that tactile feel back in their work, bridging the gap between a traditional tablet and a powerful workstation.
Right, versatility is so important, especially in a creative field. Although, one thing that kept coming up in the reviews was that the nano black finish, it seems to be a bit of a fingerprint magnet. Not a deal breaker, but if you're someone who likes their tech to look pristine, brand new all the time, something to think about. Maybe keep a microfiber cloth handy, especially for those Instagram shots of your new setup.
Right, a small aesthetic detail, I guess, considering everything else. Now, beyond the sleek design, the screen is where you'll be spending most of your time. So let's talk about that display. A 13.3-inch, 3.2K OLED HDR display. That's sharp, really sharp. OND technology means each pixel creates its own light, leading to deep blacks and vibrant colors, which is essential when you need to see all those subtle variations in your work.
Yeah, no, the color accuracy sounds amazing. It covers 100% of the DCI-PT color gamut, and it's Pantone validated. That's a huge deal for anyone working with visuals, video editors who need, spot-on color grading, graphic designers who need colors to match perfectly for branding. That certification basically means that the colors on the screen are aligned with that globally recognized Pantone system. So, there's consistency between what you see on your laptop and the final product, whether it's printed or displayed on other calibrated screens. No more guessing games about whether that red is actually the right red.
Right. It takes the guesswork out of it. You can trust that your vision is being represented accurately. And those deep blacks and vibrant colors that OLED is known for, they make a difference, when you're fine-tuning a design or doing color correction on footage.
But, and there's usually a but, right? A few reviews pointed out that the refresh rate is 60 hertz. For a laptop in this price range, some people might see that as a bit of a downside, especially if they're used to that super smooth scrolling and responsiveness of higher refresh rates, on other devices. What do you think for someone coming from a high refresh rate gaming monitor? Would that 60 hertz feel jarring even for, say, non-gaming creative work?
That's a good question. I mean, 60 hertz is definitely good enough for most creative tasks, but yeah, if you're really sensitive to how smoothly things move on the screen, you might notice the difference. Even just scrolling through a document or navigating a complex program, it really comes down to personal preference and what you're used to.
Okay, let's talk power. Let's get into the guts of this thing, the performance and processing. This is where it gets interesting because we saw both Intel and AMD processors mentioned, depending on which specific model you're looking at. One source specifically highlighted the Intel Core i9-3900H, while others mentioned AMD Ryzen AI processors. Sounds like you have some choices to make.
You do, and that's important to keep in mind. Depending on the exact model you're considering, you'll probably find either a high-performance Intel chip or one of those new AMD Ryzen AI processors. They're both designed to handle those demanding creative apps, but they have their own strengths, based on their architecture. But generally, either one will power through stuff like 4K video editing or 3D rendering without breaking a sweat.
And alongside those processors, you've got equally impressive RAM and storage. We're talking 32 gigs of LPDDR5 RAM and up to a 2 terabyte PCIe 4.0 SSD. That sounds insanely fast for, opening and working with huge creative files. Although one review did mention that the RAM is soldered, which means you can't upgrade it later on. So for someone who wants a laptop that'll last for years, is that a deal breaker, or are 32 gigs probably going to be enough for a while for most creative work?
That's a good point. Soldered RAM is pretty common in slim laptops. It saves space and might help with power efficiency. 32 gigs is a lot, and it's enough for most demanding tasks right now. But yeah, because you can't upgrade it, you really need to think about what you might need down the line. If your work tends to get more and more memory intensive, that's definitely something to factor in.
Makes sense. Now, for the graphics power, we saw an NVIDIA RTX 4070 GPU mentioned in one review, and more broadly, NVIDIA GeForce RTX graphics cards and others. Either way, sounds like it can handle some serious graphical heavy lifting.
Yeah, for sure. A dedicated NVIDIA RTX GPU is a huge plus for a lot of creative pros. It means you get hardware acceleration for things like encoding and decoding video, faster 3D rendering, and it even powers some of those AI features that are popping up in software like Adobe Premiere Pro, After Effects, Blender, Photoshop. The specific model, whether it's the 4070 or a different RTX card, that'll determine how much graphical power you've got. But the bottom line is this laptop is ready for visually demanding work.
And then there are those built-in AI capabilities. It's really interesting to see artificial intelligence becoming more integrated into creative work. Things like AI-powered photo organization were mentioned, which could be a lifesaver for anyone managing massive image libraries.
It shows how AI is being used to help creatives be more productive. And it goes beyond just photo tagging, We're seeing AI in things like content-aware fill in Photoshop or smart object selection. The reviews didn't go deep into all the specific AI features on the PX13 beyond organization, but it's something to watch as this tech keeps getting better and could streamline your work even more in the future.
Okay, now for the folks who are always on the move, and let's be real, that's a lot of creatives, battery life, and connectivity are crucial. The ProArt PX13 has a 75 watt-hour battery, and some reviews claim up to 10 hours of use on a single charge. That sounds pretty decent for a day out in the field, right?
Yeah, sounds promising, but keep in mind how long the battery actually lasts really depends on what you're doing. If you're constantly rendering high-res video or using other demanding programs, you'll probably get less than that. But the fast charging, getting back up to 50% in just 30 minutes, that's a big plus for when you need a quick boost between, work sessions.
Yeah, a real lifesaver when you're on a tight deadline. And in terms of plugging in all your gear, external displays and all that, it seems like it's got you covered. We've got Thunderbolt 4 ports, which are super fast for transferring data, especially those big video files, plus HDMI 2.1, USB 3.2, Gen 2, and even a microSD card reader. Lots of options to connect all your essentials.
Yeah, that variety of ports means it'll work with a bunch of different devices, which is important for professional setup. That microSD card reader is particularly handy for photographers and videographers, for quickly getting footage and images off their cameras. And don't forget the wireless capabilities. Wi-Fi 6E and Bluetooth 5.2, that means smooth, reliable wireless connections, whether you're sending huge files or doing video calls.
Okay, now here's where ASUS is adding something really interesting for creatives specifically. The ASUS Dial, or DiePad. One review talked about a physical dial, almost like a little control knob, and another mentioned a dial pad that's built into the touchpad. They both do the same basic thing, right? Can you explain how these would make creative work easier?
It's really clever how ASUS is giving you more tactile control in a laptop. Whether it's that physical die you can turn or the virtual one on the touchpad, it's all about making it more intuitive to work with your software. Imagine adjusting your brush size in Photoshop by just twisting the dial or scrubbing through your video timeline in Premiere Pro without having to click and drag so precisely. These aren't just gimmicks. You can map shortcuts to these controls, and that could save you a ton of time on those big projects, especially when you're on a deadline.
Yeah, it sounds like it could make a big difference, cutting down on those repetitive tasks and letting you focus more on, the actual creative process. And it all seems to connect with the ProArt Creator Hub software that lets you optimize performance for certain tasks, calibrate the display for accurate colors, and monitor the overall health of the system. It's all about customizing the laptop to fit your creative needs.
Precisely. That software is like your command center for managing all the special features and making sure everything's running smoothly for your creative workflows. That display calibration, for example, it's key for keeping the colors accurate over time. So your work looks the same across different devices and platforms.
Now, with all that power packed into a pretty small design, you have to wonder about heat. It sounds like ASUS has put a lot of effort into keeping this thing cool.
They really have. The reviews mention an advanced cooling system, dual fans for better airflow, a vapor chamber to spread the heat more efficiently, and even liquid metal thermal compounds on the processor. That's some serious cooling tech. It all works together to pull heat away from the important components, even when you're pushing the laptop hard, with things like long rendering sessions. It's all about maintaining consistent performance, making sure it doesn't slow down because it's overheating or get too noisy, which is essential when you're in the creative zone.
Okay, so big picture. What's the overall verdict on the ASUS ProArt PX13? It sounds like a pretty solid option for creatives who need a powerful machine they can take anywhere.
Yeah, most of the reviews are really positive. They're calling it a premium 2-in-1 that really hits that sweet spot between power, portability, and of course that stunning OLED display. And they consistently point to that ASUS Dial or Dial pad as something that can really boost your productivity, especially for creative work.
But like any piece of tech, there are some potential drawbacks to consider, right? We've talked about that 60 hertz refresh rate and the fact that the RAM isn't upgradable. What other things did the reviews mention?
Well, battery life, while it seems pretty good for everyday use, could be an issue if you're doing really demanding work or you often find yourself working away from an outlet for a long time. A couple of reviews also mentioned some problems with software drivers and ASUS customer support, which is something to look into. Maybe check out some recent user feedback to see what they're saying. And a few people mentioned bloatware, pre-installed software that they felt wasn't necessary and wanted to uninstall.
And we can't forget the price. All the reviews say it's a premium laptop, so it's definitely a serious investment.
Yeah, no doubt. You're paying for that top-of-the-line OLED display, the powerful internals, the sturdy build, and those features designed specifically for creatives. You'll need to weigh that cost against the benefits it would bring to your work and, of course, your budget.
So we've taken a deep dive into the ASUS ProArt PS13, looking at it from different angles, highlighting both the impressive stuff and the potential downsides.
And that brings us to you, the listener. Now it's your turn. Think about how this combination of portability and power fits into your creative process. What's that one feature that your next workstation absolutely has to have? That's the question to ask yourself as you continue your research.